circumstantial.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the well-run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why do you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders, pushing up just like these boulders. This conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers to give up.
Politics and sinners, they all the same.
Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up,
won't play the role.
Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the receipts. I just want all of humanity.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. You always know I start off with independent music. And this morning I got Bryson Gray, Lighthouse, RU3, Where Your House At. And we'll be right back right after this.
Too long, time to get up off that mill. You ain't walking in the spirit when that flesh gon' get killed. Name good everywhere, stay 100 like I'm Will. On a rock on the sand, where your house gon' be built. Yeah, where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at? Yeah, where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at? Boy, you still dipping in that scene. You ain't bout that, get off the milk. Come get solid food, this is Outback. Rappers turn a rat for the cheese. This a mousetrap. Hit the scriptures on me, I can't go nowhere without that. Say you Christian, Christ not what you giving. Living like the world, you a grown man. What you doing, dressing like a girl? They gon' make God throw up, you gon' make them earl. Get in the gym, work out till salvation, not be doing curls. Give me the scripture, don't care how you feel. Chapter and verse, come and get you a meal. Y'all should be teachers, but need every still. Go kill the flesh, time to go on the drill. Hebrews 5:12, that's his word and it's real. Stay on the punch, you can't get in the field. Verse 14, go acquire the skill. Stand on the rock, tell me what do you build? You been Christian way too long, time to get up off that mill. You ain't walking in the spirit when that flesh gon' get killed. Name good everywhere, stay 100 like I'm Will. On a rock on the sand, where your house gon' be built. Yeah, where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at? Yeah, where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at? House been on the rock, cause when I heard it, then I walked it out. If you ain't preaching Bible, but opinions, what we talk about. Can't put my feet on sand unless I'm ducked off at the beat. And we got pastors say they hold it, but be fumbling in the sheets. Yeah, I just bought me a new Bible, but all my cousins buying buttons. I minister how I live, a spirit war won't go for nothing. I stay covered, no assumption. I get lethal in the booth. I read the word and get the punching, so I'm swinging with the truth. On this outlet what we preach, it ain't on me, it's in me. So before you make it up, only suggestion you should read ESV like 223, so with this ain't no I can't miss. CCG remaining solid, house lit, don't you forget. You been Christian way too long, time to get up off that mill. You ain't walking in the spirit when that flesh gon' get killed. Name good everywhere, stay 100 like I'm Will. On a rock on the sand, where your house gon' be built. Yeah, where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at? Yeah, where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at?
Deep call out the deep, I'm so far out I can't see land. Holy Spirit woke me out my sleep to seek the Son of Man. B-I-B-L-E the blueprint, I'm just sticking to his plan. When the storm come, I just take my peace and put it in his hand. Check my foundation, ain't no cracks. Solid rock, I stand on that. CCG stand back to back, the few really ready for any attack. Wrote the scriptures on my heart to make sure that I never lack. Treat my flesh like Oklahoma, get off my back and lay the hat. You know the game and how it go. I've been killing my flesh daily. Today I'm like 8-0. Satan think he big and bad. Them first two houses had to go. Tried to huff and puff a house on solid rock. Go ahead and blow. I'm just here to let you know that you been
Christian way too long. Time to get up off that mill. You ain't walking in the spirit when that flesh gon' get killed. Name good everywhere. Stay 100 like on will. On a rock or on the sand. Where your house gon' be built. Yeah. Where your house at? Where your house at? Where your house at? Yeah. Where your house at? Where your house at? Where
That was Bryson Gray. Where your house at? This was news since last night. But I don't think people are like shocked. Brian O'Hara resigned last night after, I don't know, I would say his whole time as police chief, it has been a roller coaster. You know, I remember him coming in as police chief in Minneapolis, and you know, when they were going through his appointment and all that, I went up there and to Minneapolis City Council and I spoke, because I had done my research on O'Hara, and I really felt like if he stayed out of the politics in Hennepin County and in Minneapolis, he could make it. But that's not how it went. He wasn't allowed to stay out of the bullshit when it came to the politics in Minneapolis or even Hennepin County. And you know, for everything that I've done, that I've talked about, you know, about Brian O'Hara, is that I really did feel like he was a good choice, you know, for that police department. And hearing all the things that are starting to come out, and it just really made me realize, or made me even see, just that, you know, even the people that want to do good, they don't always do good. So let me get into Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara resigning last night.
The job. And when trust is broken, it becomes extremely difficult to continue leading effectively.
Breaking news tonight, Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara is out. Mayor Jacob Frey says he has accepted O'Hara's resignation. His resignation comes after a report found O'Hara interfered with an investigation.
We have team coverage of this tonight. Our So Young Kim will have more on the timing of this action.
But we begin with Fox 9's Karen Scullin tonight. So, Karen, you learned about this press conference late tonight, and you were also in the room as we heard from the mayor. What can you tell us about some of these findings tonight?
Well, there's a lot going on with this. Yes, I learned probably late this afternoon that this was likely going to happen. Let me start with what happened today. The mayor says he received the final report on this investigation late today. He met with the chief, told him, based on the findings of this investigation, he could be disciplined up to being discharged or fired. At that point, the chief said he would resign from his position, and the mayor accepted that resignation. Now let's talk about the findings. It comes from an allegation that the chief had a sexual relationship with a subordinate. To be clear, that was not substantiated. What was substantiated is that the chief possibly or likely interfered with the investigation into that claim. I did make a data request and got the information, not only the disciplinary letter from the mayor to the chief, but also the accompanying investigative report. I'm going to read a line from it. It's the conclusion. It says that the investigator has determined that there is sufficient evidence to substantiate the allegation that Chief O'Hara interfered in the original investigation by knowingly and intentionally deleting data on his city-issued cell phone. There is also sufficient evidence to substantiate the allegation that Chief O'Hara interfered in the original investigation by discussing it with at least one city employee in the convention of explicit after he explicitly was told not to discuss the case, but apparently he did. Now, this is all coming after he was just renominated by the mayor to be chief again. That was a few weeks ago. The mayor said, well, he didn't know the findings were going to come in and this is what they were going to say. But if we remember correctly, there were like 30 investigations or complaints against the chief. And I was told just a few minutes ago that 17 of those are still open. And even though the chief has resigned, they will still be investigated. So there's a lot that's still unraveling with this, but 17 of these are still open. I'm also told that while the chief has resigned, it's not exactly official because he is also on investigatory leave. So these are kind of overlapping at this point, and there has been no, well, the mayor has accepted. There's no like official timeline of his resignation yet. At least that's what I'm told by the mayor's office. So a lot going on here, a lot of moving parts happening here. And those 17 investigations, like I said, are still kind of unfolded. And even if he's gone, they will be also still be investigated. So this will go on for some time. I can tell you there have been a lot of rumors or a lot of back talk about these possible allegations for a long time now, for at least a year now. So there's certainly more to learn about this case. We'll go over these documents even more thoroughly. I can tell you the mayor also sent a letter to MPD officers as well, kind of informing them of what's going on and saying, you know, they're great at their job. They still have a lot of important work to do, and that will not stop, and things will keep moving forward with MPD as they have been. So that's the gist of it from here right now. We'll send it back to you. I don't know if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to ask me, but certainly a lot of layers to this one.
Yeah, a lot of layers, Karen. I do have a question because people might be wondering what happens now then. Police chief is out, who takes over, and then what does the hiring then look like for the next chief?
Well, the who takes over at the interim is going to be Katie Blackwell. She is an assistant chief, and she's been the assistant chief for some time now. She will take over as interim chief until they find a new one. They're going to do a search from here on out. But it's interesting because now we have Commissioner Todd Barnett kind of in limbo. The mayor nominated him to be public safety commissioner. Council has not been on board with this, and it kind of just keeps going round and round with the commissioner of safety, with the public safety commissioner. So we have to wait to see what happens with that position because Barnett could be out. Now we have the chief out. So we have two big public safety positions that could soon be, or that could be open, that we just sort of need to see what happens. So a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to figure out for the city here.
Yeah, and Karen, quickly, you know, for the rank and file, this is just a lot of uncertainty right now in this department with all of this back and forth. And this announcement's just an hour old, of course, but they're already struggling to keep their numbers up.
Right. I believe the last I was given staff numbers. I think they're at 638 with the new recruits in the department right now. You know, just keeping morale up is important. Obviously, these MPD officers are doing the job every day, no matter who's chief at this point. And I think there were rumblings ahead of this that this could come down. So I don't know that it was a total surprise, especially because, you know, the chief was not renominated by the mayor, but he hadn't been confirmed. City Council hadn't brought it up for a vote yet. So, yeah, I mean, I think the goal for the mayor, he said, is to just keep MPD going, let those officers do the good work that they do, and keep moving forward.
All right, Karen Scullin live in Minneapolis tonight. And O'Hara did come in during a tumultuous time. He has been with the city of Minneapolis since November of 2022.
And during that time, he has led the department through some very difficult times. So of course, this includes Annunciation, the deadly mass shooting there, and also the shooting and killing of an on-duty police officer. So Arsal Young also out there tonight. So Young, given, you know, the seriousness of this investigation, the question might be, why wasn't O'Hara fired sooner then?
Yeah, Mayor Jacob Fry calls this a tough decision, but the right one tonight. Here's a bit of what he had to say. Take a listen.
I informed the chief that I would be disciplining him, and that's up to and including discharge, and he resigned, and I accepted the resignation. It was an extremely painful decision, obviously, but I concluded that that was necessary to maintain public trust, and this was the right way to move forward as a city. So he was ultimately disciplined, did receive a letter. It did not make sense to offer further discipline when he was resigning himself.
And when Mayor Fry was asked that question, why O'Hara was given that option to resign and not fired outright, he says in his discussion with O'Hara late this afternoon, he made it clear that disciplinary action will be taken up to termination. At that point, Fry says O'Hara resigned, and Fry said he decided to accept that resignation. And again, Fry's team says now he goes through the formal process. O'Hara is now on investigatory leave, and they're processing his resignation. So that resignation isn't effective right now, but Mayor Fry has accepted that resignation. And a little bit more of what comes next. Fry says Assistant Chief Katie Blackwell will be the acting chief while they search for an interim police chief during this transition. Fry also mentioned Assistant Chief Blackwell as the acting chief will also be up for that job for the interim police chief here. We also asked whether the broader search will either stay local within the department ranks, a lateral move here in Minnesota, or potentially whether they're going to open up that search nationwide. And we didn't receive a response on that detail yet tonight. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, So Young Kim.
I'm calling this right now. I think one of the finalists that they're going to ask to be police chief will be Booker Hodges from Bloomington. That's just being real. That's not trying to lie. I think he would be a good fit for Minneapolis. I'm not sure how the other council members or even so-called street activists, whatever, would take it, but I'm not sure what actually Minneapolis needs. It definitely needs truth and transparency, and it definitely needs a culture change, and that culture change hasn't happened yet. We still have people in leadership roles inside of MPD who got on the stand, Katie Blackwell, and lied, perjured herself about MRT, a move that she had done herself. So I think you'll see more come out in the next few days and weeks about this whole thing with Brian O'Hara. So just stay tuned for that, watch it. But also as well, I wanted to talk about Marvin Haynes for a minute. And I think that a lot of like Alpha News, and this one is the American Experiment. I have a real big issue with this. You have a detective who was in Hennepin County Sheriff at that time, didn't work in Minneapolis Police Department. Why? This is what I'm going to say, right? Because we're going to get into this, and this is about a half hour long, right? And I really do feel like this is something that Republicans need to pay attention to, because I really do feel like the things that are coming out right now, right, are going to be, if Minnesota turns red or if Minnesota turns blue. This is an opportunity, I really feel like, for Republicans to gain voters, right? But this is also an opportunity for them to lose voters. And I want people to pay really close attention, because the DFL is going to lose votes over this. The whole Marvin Haynes, they're going to lose votes. People are not going to want to vote for Amy Klobuchar. They're not going to want to vote for people who endorsed Amy Klobuchar. And I really do feel like people need to do their research on everything when it comes to the flower shop, the police officers. Because I know they brought up about the prosecutor wasn't, no, okay, listen. They talk about circumstantial evidence. To me, I feel like I watched this morning, right, for a little bit. That's why I was coming on late, like at 10:15. And I was just getting mad. because it's not like they don't want the truth. They're going with a narrative because there were so many things that that weren't talked about. They didn't talk about how Hennepin County Sheriff's was doing the same thing. His same organization, same department, Richard Stanek, was doing investigations. Had over 3,000 pay. This is the one thing that I don't understand, right? So I'm going to get back to this, but I wanted to show you something, right? So this is about Jerry's Flower Shop, right? This is a data request freedom of information act, right? So they wrote back to him, "We're contacted you in reference to the FOIPA request number included in the subject line of this email," which was about Jerry's Flower Shop and how the FBI was doing investigations on the flower shop for illegal gambling and so much other stuff, right? That I really do feel like it's not coming out, and it should. Why are people not talking about this? This is one thing that I sat here and I listened to that Hennepin County Sheriff, X, whatever you want to call it, and even the podcast host. It's like, why not ask Marvin? Why not ask Marvin? And then the crazy thing they want to put, I'll let this play or whatever, the podcast, that his name is David Zimmer, I think it is. And to me, it was like, damn, you're only getting not even somebody that was on the case. You're getting somebody that only had, who was a third party, who was nowhere near the case and is getting all his information from other people. Instead of actually people getting out and doing the homework themselves. This is why I feel like Republicans can win or lose Minnesota right now. I'm going to be 100% honest, right? They could win Minnesota if they do what's right. But I really don't feel like they're going to do what's right, because I'll tell you like this: Republicans have no influence inside of Minneapolis. I'll even say inside of Hennepin County, because a lot of people don't like Mary Motory. They don't like Jacob Frey. So all that comes up and they want to talk about socialist and Marxist and all this extra shit, right? Anything other than talking about why was the FBI watching Jerry's Flower Shop? Was it because of the illegal gambling that was going on and that Hennepin County and Minneapolis police officers frequented? This is, what the crazy thing is? Like, I could understand if people thought that was made up. It's not. You could actually, if people actually fucking did their research, instead of not even knowing something, they're just reading and you're not even getting all the info. I feel like that's what's wrong with our media right now. Even when it comes down to Alpha News, I know a lot of people talk about, oh, they put the truth out here. They put one side of the truth, not the whole truth. They keep some of that shit out, especially when it's bad about police. They keep that shit out. And here's my thing about it. If y'all want to really unite Minnesotans, hold everybody accountable, not just when it's good for politics. Hold everybody accountable. Because this is the problem. Y'all will not call out the bad cops. We know y'all will call out Katie Blackwell. But what about all the other badass police officers? That's what I'm saying. Like, we really have to see what we're fighting for, because I really do feel like right now in Minnesota, they're not fighting for the right things. It's all really performative to me. I'll keep it 100. It's all performative. So let's get into this American experiment.
Public Safety Policy Fellow David Zimmer. Dave, you are a 33-year law enforcement veteran of the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and you come to us with a story today that is so crazy. It honestly made my jaw drop when I read it first on AmericanExperiment.org. So thank you for coming here and sharing with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'll give the high-level summary. 22 years ago, a flower shop owner was murdered during a robbery in North Minneapolis. Based on evidence and eyewitness accounts, Marvin Haynes was convicted by a grand jury and sentenced to life in prison. Nearly 20 years later, Haynes was legally exonerated of the crime and released from prison. Last week, the state committed to paying him $4.5 million for his trouble. But was he even guilty? Dave, you were actually serving in the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office when this happened, is that correct?
Yeah. So to make it clear, I did not work on this case, but I was an investigator at the time. I know all of the investigators that worked on this case and have kept in touch with people. I also know the prosecutor who prosecuted the case and have talked to him in the recent days. And this case is just so frustrating to see how Mary Moriarty in particular abdicated her role as a prosecutor and led to the process where all of this happened, the exoneration and now the payout of $4.5 million.
Yeah, so let's just start at the beginning with the crime. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, so you indicated there's a flower shop called Jerry's Flower Shop in North Minneapolis. It was a longtime family business on a corner on Lyndale Avenue North. And on a Sunday morning, two of the family members, Cynthia and her brother Harry, were working in the shop. And Cynthia reports that a young black male who she had seen in the neighborhood in the past, walking on the sidewalk and such, so it wasn't the first time she'd ever seen him, came in the store and asked to buy flowers for his mom's birthday. So she started working with this young man. She didn't know his name. And after about 5 minutes of being in the store, all of a sudden she looked up and the young man was pointing a silver or chrome-plated revolver right in her face and robbing her and her brother. Well, her brother came out from the back to ask what was going on, and at that moment, Cynthia ran out of the front door, and as she was running out, she heard two gunshots. She ran to a neighbor's house, and as she did so, she saw this young black male running up the alley, or walking up the alley quickly, leaving the area. Police get there. They find her brother, Harry Shearer, dead of a gunshot wound to the chest. They found two bullets, just like she had heard and as she had reported. One had struck her brother, one hit the wall, and they recovered it. And from that point, the police just started investigating because it was somewhat of a whodunit at that point. They had a vague description of who this young man was. What they did is they used a canine, a bloodhound, to try to see if they could pick up the track of this person who left. The canine led to the back of a residence nearby. They investigated that residence, learned that some young black males did reside there with their mother, but over approximately a day, they were able to rule all of those people out as being involved. Part of ruling that out was they did put together a photo lineup with one of those young men that lived in that residence who was the closest to match the description
That she gave of the killer.
that she had given.
Okay.
So they were doing their due diligence. They didn't know who this person was. They put a photo lineup together, showed it to Cynthia, the witness, and I don't believe I wouldn't call this an identification, but what she said is, after looking at all 6 pictures, well, this one looks pretty close, like 75% close to what the guy looked like, but I can't be sure. Well, again, in my opinion, that's not an identification.
Yeah.
So within days, the police start getting calls, some anonymous, from the community saying the person who did that flower shop robbery and murder is Marvin Haynes, or Little Marvin, he was known as. He's 16 years old, lived in the North Minneapolis area. So the police started investigating Little Marvin, put together a photo lineup. He had committed crimes in the past, so they had a booking photo of him from a year or two earlier. Put a photo lineup together, and now this is 2 days after the murder. Showed it to the sister, the witness, and she's going through the photos, and as she gets to Marvin Haynes's photo, she immediately says, "Oh my God, that's him," with her index finger.
Wow.
Very, very certain, pointing to the photo and very excited. That's him. That's the guy who robbed us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, this wasn't the first time. She didn't just see this kid one time for a minute. She had seen him in the neighborhood, and so she was somewhat familiar with who he was, right? That is, in my opinion, and from my experience showing photo lineups, that's an identification. That's a very dramatic certainty that she knew who she was talking about.
Right.
For a number of reasons, the police and the prosecutor decided, let's make absolutely sure. So they had Marvin in custody that day as well. He had an outstanding warrant. They had picked him up about the same time they were doing the photo lineup, and they decided, well, hey, the next day let's do an in-person lineup with Cynthia. So they did that, and as they walked people in one at a time, she was saying no, no. Then when Marvin came in, she got excited, and it was described that she sat bolt upright in her chair, viewing him, and said words to the effect, "Yes, that's the man that was, or the young man that came in to rob us."
And this is only 2 days after the crime.
It's 3 or maybe 4 days.
Okay.
The live lineup was about 4 days later.
Okay.
They over time, during that live lineup, she became very emotional, which is typical, and she was still under trauma from just losing her brother. And she did say things like, they're just all blending together. I'm so confused, so confused, and that type of thing. But very emotional about the whole incident.
Yeah.
But again, when he first walked in the room, it was apparent, oh my God, that's him.
Okay. Yeah. So it seems pretty clear that she had an idea of who this was. Especially, I think it's important you point out that she'd seen him before.
Right.
It wasn't only in the heat of the moment where, you can imagine that eyewitnesses can be mistaken about things. But if it was someone she'd seen around the neighborhood before, it wasn't the first time ever interacting with him, I feel like that really strengthens the argument too. Was there any other evidence that this was the man who was guilty?
Yes, there was actually a 14-year-old witness who didn't know Marvin and wasn't in trouble. So it wasn't like police had arrested this other potential witness and were putting pressure on him to talk. This 14-year-old actually called the police a day or two after the murder, after hearing that a murder had taken place, and told the police what he saw. And so this spans over about a week. The week earlier, he had been in the area and he had run up against what turns out to be Marvin Haynes, walking near the flower shop, and Haynes was hassling him for money and hassling him about his clothes he was wearing. So the day of the murder, he ran into him again near the flower shop, and he was concerned. He said, "Oh, here's that guy. He's going to hassle me again." So he avoided him and went to a store, and as he was coming out, he explains to the police, "I heard what I thought were gunshots, and I saw this same guy, run out of the flower shop and go up the alley." He said, "I didn't report anything right away, but when I saw that there was a murder and a robbery at the flower shop, I called."
So he saw him coming out of the flower shop?
Right.
Okay.
After what he heard were gunshots, what he thought were gunshots. So the police showed that young man the same photo lineup. He wasn't quite as excited as Cynthia was, but he, in the same way, discounted the first 2 or 3. And when it came to Marvin, he said, Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy I saw come out of the shop. That's the guy that was hassling me the week before. No doubt about it. So they showed him the in-person lineup as well, and he again picked him out. And then both at trial, both he and Cynthia picked Marvin out in the courtroom as the man that they had dealt with before or seen before, and the man that was in the flower shop at the time of the robbery.
Okay, so is that the main evidence then that was presented?
That's the primary evidence. However, the police contacted, I lost count, but it's upwards of 8 to 10 other people. So friends of Marvin's and cousins of Marvin. They went to Marvin's house and spoke to his 4 sisters and mom. And this becomes important later. Because Marvin's alibi is he was laying on the couch all day this Sunday that the murder happened, sleeping on the couch all day, and said, my mom and sisters can verify that. They never did. They never confirmed for the police that he was there the whole day. They all had different stories. And interestingly enough, he's on trial for his life. They never testified on his behalf to say he was laying on the couch all day.
Yeah.
There were other cousins involved cousins and friends that testified about different facts that Marvin shared with them either before or after the murder that only he would know, only Marvin would know, or people that were making up a story wouldn't make up these details because they were details that actually happened in the murder.
Sure. And don't police always do that? They withhold some details from the public, for example, or this is what always happens on TV. They withhold some details from the public so that they know, if someone does come forward with some specific details that were correct about the crime, that would tell them, okay, maybe this person does have good information.
Exactly. So one of the important details were a number of his friends and cousins told the police that, that morning he was asking people if they wanted to go along with him or telling people he was about to, quote, hit a lick, which they all said hit a lick means he was going to rob somebody. And he was, at that time, he was known as a kind of a stick-up guy. He was out doing armed robberies. A few of these witnesses described him at that time being in the possession of a chrome revolver. Now that's it's a somewhat rare gun for a young guy to have. Back then they would have had a semi-automatic pistol of some sort.
Yeah.
And so this is a specific gun. And chrome versus black and all this.
Podcasting shouldn't stress you out. Stop. Riverside is all you need to produce a high-quality podcast. Record like a pro. Edit.
It's unbelievable to me that they would just come up with this story that happens to match what only Cynthia knows or Marvin knows, what gun he had. So quite a few people put a silver revolver in his hands. And then after the robbery, quite a few people came forward to the police and acknowledged that he said things to them that let them know he was involved in that robbery. He said, I shot an old white man who came out from the back and startled me. He wouldn't give up the money. Things that kind of matched the facts of the case.
Yeah.
One person even said he shot twice. That's something only Marvin and Cynthia would know. So these were all circumstantial things or testimony that matched facts in the case that, again, only Cynthia and Marvin would know.
Right.
I want to stop it there, right there for a minute, right? And I want to show you a part of the unicorn riot, because they did a very thorough investigative series on Marvin Haynes, right? And I want to read a little bit to you, just a little section. So back in 2022 and 2023, Unicorn Riot conducted interviews and reviewed thousands of pages of court documents, trial transcripts, and police reports. In the course of our investigation into the Haynes case, those documents and conversations revealed a pattern of police coercing teenage witnesses, an investigation completely lacking physical evidence linking Haynes to the scene, repeated violations of police eyewitnesses, identification procedures, and an overall pattern of racial bias. In the midst of our investigations, one of the state's key witnesses, Marvin's younger cousin, and that's the part that you hear David Zimmerman talking about the 14-year-old. Well, that was a cousin of Marvin Haynes. That was a family member who recanted his story, right? So Isaiah Harper admitted to lying about Marvin's guilt at trial. Harper, who was only 14 at the time of the murder, told Unicorn Riot that cops got him to say what they wanted him to say by threatening him with decades behind bars. They continued to coerce his testimony, despite him telling judges and juries repeatedly that he was lying and that the police had made the story up. That the publication of this series started in early February, part 4 being published of April 2023. I think people should really go look at this. I'll put it in the chat so people can look at this, because I really do feel like people should go look at this, because it told a story, right? And it told just not a narrative that the police wanted people to find out and to hear. It was really the whole case. It wasn't just bits and pieces. And I feel like that's what you're getting with the American Experiment. You're not getting the whole story because this was very long, right? This was very, they ruined a person's life, and not even just a person, a family. And it wasn't just a family, because North Minneapolis really took a hit during all of this. So to see, this is why I hate when people say they're independent, because how are you independent if you're shit ain't independent if you only got conservative or right wing. Anytime it comes to putting the truth out here about police or the system, it seems like people don't ever want to hear that part if it's right wing conservative media. And that I do feel like is a big problem, because you dependent on the media company is how they cover it. So if it's a Democratic, if it's a Republican or MAGA, or even progressive, and then you got like the socialists. So it's like everybody out here says that they're independent, right? But I want to ask people a question: are you independent if all you cover is protests? How are you independent? Because you're leaning one way. You're not leaning both. You're not. No. So that's what I really do feel like the biggest problem is. And I even look at myself, and like what type of, I just want the truth out here. People ask me, what type of narrative are you putting out here? I'm not trying to put out a narrative. I'm trying to put out the truth so people can make the best decision going forward for themselves and their community, right? It's not about putting out a narrative or a fairy tale story to get people to follow along blindly. I want people to be educated. I want people to be informed. I don't want people to be out here indoctrinated and just talking out of their ass when it comes to, making change. Because that's how I really do feel like when I got into this with BLM and all that. I was doing a lot of, like, not saying that I wasn't, because I went in with the best intentions, right? And I still have the best intentions. But I feel like I was just blind following, because when it did, to a degree, I was blind following, because even when it came down to legislation, with the ordinances with the rental licensing that I have in Red Wing, like I always wanted to make sure there was teeth in there. I wanted to make sure that it was protecting the people that it was meant for. And I see in some cases I didn't do that, especially when it came to my proclamation making racism a public health crisis. I wasn't allowed to put teeth in there. And I fought telling tooth and nail with these people with the city of Red Wing to make sure that I made some legislation or ordinance that would do the best for Black people, no matter if the Black people that were there during the time trying to get this through didn't even live in Red Wing. I wanted it to continue, and I really do feel like that hasn't been the case. But going back to like American Experiment, like I don't understand this, man, especially when it comes down to the media companies. Like, why is it so hard for us to do the right thing? Why is it so hard for us to do the right thing and just tell the truth? Don't put a narrative out here. You're interviewing a man who didn't even have no eyes on the case when it happened, because the detective that was investigating, who, I think he's still alive, Michael Keefe, but at the time got off the Marvin Haynes case because of his cancer. And he disagreed. There was Sarah Sorella, who is a former MPD officer. So it's crazy to me of how, because I'll even say it again, even with the Katie Blackwell, people know that she perjured herself, but because it's Alpha News, you have the people inside of Minneapolis and Hennepin County that don't pay no heed to that because of the media source. And I really do feel like that's fucked up, because they do put a lot of good stories out there. And it comes from a Republican MAGA type of narrative. It's not about the truth. And I think that's what people really just want. They don't want any kind of agenda. They don't want any type of narrative. They just want the truth, because the truth always hurts a lot more when we put white lies on it now. So I really do feel like people need to take accountability for the way that they do media.
Right.
And then one other thing about the chrome revolver. The police actually located a friend who Marvin and the friend had stole the revolver from the friend's dad.
Oh.
So months earlier, this friend, Jamar, and Marvin Marvin stole the gun from Jamar, and Jamar was carrying the gun that belonged to Jamar's dad. They went to Jamar's dad. He acknowledged that, yeah, he had a chrome revolver that his son had told him Marvin had stolen from him. But then he got complete cold feet and backed away from the story. He never testified to that because he knew his gun was used in a murder.
Right.
So it's understandable why they couldn't use that information, but the police had that information, as part of the whole case.
Right. Okay. So all of that then was presented at trial, and he actually this went to a grand jury first, right? And they said, yes, go ahead and charge him. And then it went through all the way up to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Is that right?
Right. Those are great points. So the police investigated. The county attorney reviewed the police information and said, yeah, we agree with you. The county attorney brings all the evidence to a citizen grand jury and presents all of the evidence to them. They say, yeah, we agree. We're going to indict Marvin Haynes with first-degree murder. They have all the pretrial hearings where evidence is litigated, and the judge agrees the evidence was, including the eyewitness testimony, was obtained properly and gathered properly. They proceeded with a trial in front of a citizen jury. The jury reviewed all of the evidence, reviewed videotape of all of the testimony. Prior to the testimony, the police sit down and interview the people. and this becomes important later. It's on videotape, so you can watch and determine whether the police were, forcing somebody to tell them something they didn't want to tell. The jury watched all of that.
There's one part that I really just want to make it, because I don't really feel like, when they talk about the Marvin Haynes case, they don't talk about the whole situation or everything that happened. Yes, there is video out there. And I do believe that people need to watch that video and get an understanding. It's about 33 minutes long, but it goes into the whole story, not a narrative, right? And here's, like Robert has put out there, he's on the, if you look at the Unicorn Riot, they put his name out there as an investigator. And, a lot of the evidence that, I shouldn't say evidence, but the documents and things that he put up were truthful. And there were things that the prosecution or even Hennepin County didn't want people to see, right? Because they keep on saying that it wasn't being investigated. There wasn't people looking at it. Well, that's not the truth. You know what I'm saying? We have to tell the truth about it being an illegal gambling spot, and that's where I really do feel like people don't want the truth. They don't want nothing but the truth, so help them God. So it's like, what do you want? Do you just want a narrative that's not going to give us the truth, and we're out here still fighting on a lie? Like, come on, like, what do people really want? That's what I really want to say, is because if you want to close the gap of division, this isn't the way to do it. This is not the way to do it, because I can tell you right now, you're losing more voters than what you're gaining, because you're putting a narrative. You're not even putting the truth or even a whole story out here. You're putting because of Mary, right? And I do feel like I don't even like Mary, right? I hate DFLers, and I know hate is a very powerful word, but I actually do mean that shit. And I get it. I really do get it, but I really stopped looking at the people as the problem, and it's more of the system that is allowing this shit. But it's the people who are elected who keep on allowing this crap too, because they don't want change. Change doesn't get them money, right? Change, doing the right thing, doesn't pay, but crime does. Making sure that crime goes on does. So let's get back into that American Experiment episode.
And felt there was no compelling of any statements or anything. These people came forward and weren't being compelled or forced by the police to talk. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder.
Life in prison, right?
Life in prison.
You would think any jury would take that quite seriously, too.
Exactly. Oh, definitely. As you mentioned, the Minnesota Court of Appeals reviewed the evidence and any arguments being made by his defense attorney as to why the conviction should be overturned. They affirmed the conviction. The Supreme Court did the same thing, affirmed the conviction. And it's interesting to note, at that point, we're in about 2007 at that point. Mm-hmm. Marvin and his attorneys never made the argument that the eyewitness testimony was faulty or obtained in a improper way. However, 20 years later, they did make that claim, and that's how they were successful in overturning his conviction.
Well, in fact, he didn't say anything for 15 plus years, right? He never had any complaints or filed any additional appeals for 15 plus years until Haynes filed a petition for post-conviction relief, despite being over 15 years past the cutoff to legally do so, because I think usually you have 2 years, is it, right?
Right.
To do that. And he did that with the help of a group, the Innocence Project, is that correct?
Yeah, the Great Northern Innocence Project.
And Mary Moriarty, who we know well on this podcast, agreed to waive the statutory time bar and the procedural bar on Haynes's petition so that he could do this 15 years later with the help of this nonprofit.
Right. It should have never taken place because the county attorney should have successfully argued that the time for him to have made these arguments was 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. The time expired, and there's a reason why you can't just perpetually keep litigating a case. We have to have an end point at some time, and he did have two different courts review the conviction and affirm it. And so at that point, your appeals are done.
And for one, I mean, some of these people are dead now, right? I mean, the key witness, the sister, is not alive to stand up for her brother, right?
Right. Unfortunately, no. And had she been alive, she could have testified at this post-conviction hearing if Mary Moriarty would have called her, and she probably wouldn't have. But she was not available, and that's an argument I've made is it's so improper to take this 20-year-old case where victims and witnesses and all of the police investigators are long retired, the prosecutor's long gone, and so there's nobody really standing in the way. And that's why we need our prosecutor to maintain the role of a prosecutor and not slide over to the side of the defense and leave that balance of justice vacant.
Yeah, you called it in your post the adversarial justice system that we have in America. I'd never really heard it. I don't think I'd heard that term until you used it, and I thought it was so interesting because that is what makes our system great is you have someone defending the people, you have someone defending the state and the rest of the community, and then you have someone defending the criminal. But what we have here is Mary Moriarty, as the prosecutor, has decided to single-handedly undercut the whole system, the jury of peers, the Supreme Court, and decided that she alone would go in and decide that he was innocent. So one of my other questions is that common for a prosecutor to do?
No, it's a new phenomenon, and it's really troubling. I don't think anybody ever envisioned it happening as our system was developed. Nobody ever anticipated that somebody with
I want to stop it right there. Here's part of the post-conviction relief that this was in 2023. And if you read, let me see, where did I? So the facts upon this petition is based upon including the following, that Mr. Haynes is presently serving a life sentence arising out of false allegations that he shot and killed Harry Schroeder at a flower shop in North Minneapolis on May 16th, 2004, when Mr. Haynes was 16 years old. The only eyewitnesses to the shooting itself was the sister Cynthia, who was working with him at the flower shop at the time. Following the shooting, Cynthia called 911 from a neighbor's house, provided the first of three descriptions of the culprit. With these three descriptions, Cynthia described a black male between the ages of 19 and 22 years old, 5'10" to 5'11", about 180 pounds, with medium to dark complexion, short cropped hair, but not bald, no facial hair, and an educated manner of speaking. This description did not match Mr. Haynes, who at the time was wearing his hair in a long fro, had some amount of facial hair, was 16 years old, 3 to 6 years younger than in the description. He was 5'7", so he was 3 to 4 inches shorter than the description, and 130 pounds, which was 50 pounds less than the description, and did not speak in an educated manner. Over the course of the next 4 days, Cynthia participated in 4 separate identification procedures where she was shown a photo lineup in which Mr. Haynes was not present, where she indicated that a filler, someone who was not a suspect, looked familiar. The next day, when shown the same photo lineup, Cynthia identified the same filler with a 75 to 80% confidence. Cynthia was showing yet another photo lineup 2 days later, at which point she identified Mr. Haynes. The following day, she participated in a live lineup procedure in which she identified Mr. Haynes again, but noted feeling traumatized and having difficulty concentrating on the faces of the individuals in the lineup. Despite indicating doubt during her initial identification, Cynthia identified Mr. Haynes at trial. The only other eyewitness was Robbie Seeley, a 14-year-old high school student from St. Louis Park who attended a church in the neighborhood. He claimed he was walking by the flower shop when he heard a gunshot and saw a person, presumably the perpetrator, running from the scene. 2 days later, Seeley spoke with a school resource officer from the St. Louis Park Police Department and told him that he had information about a murder in Minneapolis. Seeley then met with the Minneapolis Police Department and described the perpetrator as a slender black male with a natural haircut, possibly faded on the sides, and some sort of a light blue, possibly zip-up sweatshirt. That same day, Seeley was shown a photo lineup and identified Mr. Haynes. A day later, he participated in the same live lineup procedure as Cynthia and again identified Mr. Haynes. At trial, Seeley identified Mr. Haynes, but testified that he expressed uncertainty to the officer next to him during the live lineup, which was not documented in the police reports. So that's, again, I'm going to tell people to go do your own research, to go look this shit up yourself, because I can tell you right now, they're not going to, doesn't matter if it's even American experiment. And I'm not asking people to believe me, because everything that I've read to you is public. I'm not asking people just to believe some story or it's actually real life. And the man was railroaded by a system that was supposed to help. And again, certain people, because they don't even talk about the reward that was paid for false information. They don't even talk about none of that shit. And to me, it's like, why don't we really talk about the real story? Why didn't you want to reach out to Mike O'Keefe? Why didn't you reach out to Sarah Sarella, who was an officer at that time for Minneapolis Police Department? It's because a lot of these people don't see this eye to eye on a lot of things. And does that make it right? No. I think people should be coming out with the truth instead of continuing a narrative, instead of speaking to the people that are actually a part of it.
You know, a public defender mindset would realize, oh, hey, if I ran for county attorney, I could subvert the system.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever really thought of it, but progressives have, or these ultra progressives have, and they've figured out our public prosecutors have a great deal of authority and a great deal of discretion. And if the wrong person gets in those positions, justice really takes a hit because they can just play the role of the defense attorney.
Yeah.
And it leaves that other side of the argument vacant.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is she holds this, I don't even know, it wasn't a trial, right? Because no one was really defending the state in this case, but she holds a hearing where people from the Innocence Project can go in and defend Marvin, right? And give their side of the story. And they basically say that eyewitness accounts are never reliable. Is that right?
Yeah, so they had an expert in eyewitness testimony come in and testify. And that she's a professor at a local college here. She testified for about 2/3 of a day that I can see out of a 2-day trial, and really just undermined the validity of any eyewitness testimony, which is problematic because these types of cases, they run up against what the perception that the public has of, watching CSI and TV, and
like me.
Real life isn't that way. Real life is based on circumstances and eyewitness testimony.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a videotape of every crime, and you don't have DNA, and in this case, Marvin used a handgun or a revolver.
I want to stop it right there. This is the order from the judge about Marvin Haynes' exoneration. And I just want to say that there was a police officer who, he's retired now, he's a lieutenant, but like I said, Michael Keefe, he did testify about the identification procedures and how he felt like it was messed up. So by them saying, this is why I have a problem, because to me, it feels like people didn't want to actually do their homework. And that if you're independent media, right, I would think people want to put out the truth. Or do you just want to put out a Republican narrative? And to me, I feel like we deserve the truth. We deserve transparency. So why not give it to the people? Unless you're trying to hide things to scare people, or things that would make it even the situation worse, where in this case, I can read something from or not read it, but I remember the prosecutor at that time, Mike Fernstall, one of the things that he said during trial, especially during his closing argument, was that if what the defense was saying, that Marvin didn't have anything to do with that crime, then it was a conspiracy and that it was made up. Well, that's the truth. Why isn't that pointed out? That he literally said during the trial, during closing arguments, exactly what happened during this case, that it was a conspiracy and that it was totally to bring down an innocent man. So I don't hear people talking about that. I don't hear American Experiment even talk about that. So even when it comes to the legislature, the Senate, and the House, they didn't talk about the fact that and I'm not saying Marvin doesn't deserve, he definitely deserves this money. His family has been torn apart. So with that being said, man, got about 8 more minutes of this.
Which does not leave a casing on the ground. So you didn't have that piece of evidence. What you had is circumstances that are just as good, in my opinion. So yes, he used a revolver. It didn't leave a casing, so there's no casing there. Some witness who, theoretically, if they're making up the story, they wouldn't know what kind of gun he was using. But they're telling us he used a revolver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that matches up with the evidence.
Right.
So that circumstantial evidence is just as powerful, in my opinion. And
yeah, I think there is kind of a myth about circumstantial evidence that it is not as legitimate or as good as sometimes the other types of evidence, but that's not really the case. Circumstantial evidence is extremely powerful and just as legitimate in a court.
Right.
There's another person who's been outspoken on this issue, and you mentioned him earlier. It's the original prosecutor in Haynes's murder trial, Mike Fernstall. He mentioned in a letter that you published on AmericanExperiment.com that he sort of expected that maybe someone would ask him to come to this hearing, to come to this trial, and because he was the original prosecutor, maybe they'd want to hear from him. Why did you think it was that he was the murderer? Well, not only did no one ask him to come, but I believe they said, maybe I didn't put this in my notes, but I believe they said, no, we're not looking for anyone to argue on that position. Is that correct?
I wasn't part of the conversation, but yeah, that's what he's related. He offered to come, and he knew that case better than anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that Mary Moriarty and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office would want one of their former attorneys that's available and willing to come testify. You would think if they were truly interested in justice, they would want to hear from that person.
And he notes that a media station did reach out to him and want to hear from him, but however, Mary Moriarty was not interested.
Right.
What is his take on this whole thing?
Well, he is absolutely disgusted by the fact that Haynes, number one, his conviction was exonerated, and then to hear this week that he's being rewarded with $4.5 million, it's just over the top. It's hard for many of us to swallow.
Yeah, so here's what happened. As you mentioned this week, as part of the end of the legislative session, they have something called a claims bill, which another thing I wasn't really familiar with, but they have this claims bill that goes through at the end of the session, and it's things that the state is paying out like this sort of restitution. And the legislature awarded $4.5 million to Marvin Haynes in this claims bill signed by Governor Walz just last week. That means that we, the taxpayers, of course, are the ones paying $4.5 million to this man who, in my opinion, clearly seems to have...
My heart's fine.
I'm only 40.
Ignoring your heart health risk is no way to go through the world.
Murdered someone. This is the largest amount of money that has ever been awarded under this statute. And it wasn't even part of an official legal settlement, right?
As I understand it, the litigants they file this petition to get funds from this act each year. And so when his conviction was overturned, he started the paperwork, filed this tort claim against the state, and then late in the process of the legislative session, one of the DFL legislators put forward a bill I guess they all have to have a bill attached to them, and put forward a bill to compensate Marvin Haynes $4.5 million for his 20-year imprisonment.
Something they did not have to do.
No, they certainly didn't have to do it, I don't think. But that's the process that's used. And unfortunately, the entire legislature, I think it gets voted on in kind of an omnibus style where people aren't really sure exactly what they're voting on.
Yeah, arguably illegal. Didn't the Supreme Court say recently that they're not supposed to have those omnibus style bills anymore? I don't know. Maybe we should circle back on that. But he also still has a civil case against the state pending. So there's actually a chance that even more of our money is going to go towards this man. Is that correct?
As I understand it, he has a civil suit against the city of Minneapolis and the police department. And that's ongoing.
So, and you've documented on AmericanExperiment.org for a long time. This isn't like a one-off thing that we've seen from Mary Moriarty. She has a long record of prioritizing criminals over members of the community. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I've been writing probably more than anyone in the state about the number of instances where she has handpicked cases, troubling in a way that she handpicks cases that are decades old, where, again, victims, witnesses, police officers, prosecutors, they're no longer around, so there's nobody to object. And then she joins the process to vacate those convictions. So there's been a handful of them that I've documented in detail, and you can find them on our website.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate you telling this story to our listeners. At AmericanExperiment.org, you can find even more.
So, like I said, people should be doing their own homework, and just don't take my word on it. Go read the court transcripts. Go read the documents. Go read the court transcripts, and you'll see the things that are out there. Because it's not hidden. It's the part that a lot of people just don't want to read. And reading is fundamental. So you can see that another community activist, so-called leader, gets locked up for DWI. And this time it is, talked about him before, Alfred Delano Flowers. And what's crazy is I keep on, every time I think about, that family or whatever, and I think about him, this dude was still not even born yet when I was out running the streets of Minneapolis. His daddy was a crackhead, sucking that glass dick. And I see that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Because I remember I called him out on this back in 2022, a couple days before Minnesota Safe Streets was given a presentation in the city of Minneapolis, and he was caught for, shouldn't say caught, but he DWI, another one. So it's not things that are just made up. This is public knowledge. These are things that you can go look up yourself. But again, back all the way in 2022, June 21st, this isn't new. Again, we have people that say they fight for the community, but yet commit crimes on the community. I don't understand that, right? Because they want TV interviews, they want nonprofit money, they want influence, they want political access. But discipline, accountability, personal responsibility, that part always seems optional. Because it is. It seems like those part of it shouldn't be, but it is. I want to talk about, before I get up out of here today, there was just something that just didn't come across. Yeah, here it goes. A 26-year-old in Shakopee was shot multiple times at Canterbury Park this morning while attending a prayer service at the expo. Police say Shakopee police responded around 9:55 Wednesday to a weapons complaint and found the victim suffering from multiple gunshots. Man, it's gonna get nice. It's getting nicer out. I don't know what more to say to make this shit any more clear to people. Watch your surroundings. It's getting warmer out. This isn't anything that's new to people. Any of that. These are things that everybody knows. The patterns of Minneapolis or the Twin Cities, that when it gets warmer out, you start seeing more and more crimes that maybe you didn't always see. Violence gets out of hand. So I'm just telling people, be safe, watch your surroundings. Shit. I don't even know what else to say, but I'll just say that it doesn't matter what community you're in or what area you're in, is that violence is happening, and I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to, but to educate people on how to make our communities better, how to unite us. So with that being said, man, I'm gonna get up out of here. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow, same time, same place, and I'm getting up out of here with Differences, Don Tripp, Eddie Villaro, and I'll see y'all tomorrow, same time, same place. Peace out.
Yeah, I know I supposed to come in right there, but fuck this shit. Yeah, I'ma come in right here. Yeah, right here. Really just got bored, upload some dogs, she gave him something to see. Ghetto bitch from Frazier, hoe a scammer, look like Barnaby. You got bags of boo-boo, we got Zaza, you should come to me. This shit can't be done the way I do it, it's only one to me. I done been the brokers and the richest, shit a different feel. He might be a shooter or a driver, they got different skills. 10, 15, and 30s, come get high, we